She didn't whisper it. She didn't say it in anger, not with a scream, not during a fight. She said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather, holding her champagne flute, adjusting her hair in the mirror of the bridal boutique. The best gift would be if you just died before my wedding. There was a brief silence afterwards, a beat of air, sharp and cold. One of her friends, I think it was Rachel, let out a shocked laugh and said, "Oh my God, stop." But she didn't stop. She looked at me through the reflection and smiled, sipping her drink like it didn't taste bitter coming from her lids. I stood frozen across the dressing room, holding her veil in my hand. I stared at her. This woman I had raised, this woman whose hand I once held when she was afraid of the dark, now quietly wishing for my absence before the most important day of her life. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. I was still, in the kind of way you can only be when pain becomes so overwhelming that even your body pauses to catch up to your heartbreak. There were 4 other women in the room. One kept fixing her lipstick, another pretended to organize floral samples just to avoid looking at me. Nobody said a word. Nobody stood up for me. She didn't say sorry. She didn't even call me mom. I gently put the veil down, smoothed the lace out with my fingers, and walked out the door without saying a word. I could hear their forced laughter behind me, trying to patch up what had just happened. But that sound only made it worse, because I remembered paying for the veil just 2 days ago. I remembered emptying my account to cover the deposit for that entire fitting. I remembered ironing her dress for the engagement party, sending her flowers on her first date with him, covering her when her card declined, buying her first phone, tutoring her for college exams, skipping meals so she could eat better. All of it, for her. But what shattered me more than what she said that day was how much I had given her and how little of me remained. I didn't always feel this forgotten. There was a time when she called me mama in that breathy voice only a toddler can pull off, when her tiny arms would wrap around my leg while I cooked so that she could be close to me, when she refused to fall asleep unless her forehead touched mine. She used to say, "When I grow up, I want to be just like you." And the truth is, I built my whole life around that sentence. She was the reason I got out of bed every morning, the reason I pushed through heartbreak, through career pauses, through bills I couldn't pay, through loneliness that echoed in the coldest parts of my nights. Because when her father left, a part of me wanted to fade right there on the bathroom floor where I crumpled after reading his goodbye letter. But I looked over and saw her in the crib, sleeping like the world had not yet taught her fear. And that's when I knew I couldn't leave. I wouldn't leave. I stayed. I fought. I poured everything I had into her. Every birthday was magical. Every scraped knee had a patient kiss. Every exam came with late-night tutoring. And "You've got this" note slid into her pencil case. I worked double shifts during the summer so she could go to dance camp. I skipped haircuts to afford her first field trip. I gave up dating because I didn't want to bring anyone into our little world who might not love her as much as I did. She used to draw little notes and hide them in my purse before I went to work. "I love you, Mama. You're my best friend. Don't forget to smile today." And I kept everyone, still do, in a box under my bed. Yellowed with time, but soft like memory. She didn't grow up in a mansion, but she grew up in love, in warmth, in sacrifice, in stories whispered at bedtime and dancing in socks on the kitchen floor. So when she told me I was in the way, when she laughed and said my death would be her dream gift, it wasn't just a cruel remark. It was a knife cutting through everything I believed we had. Because once, she belonged to me, and now she treated me like some afterthought. They say a mother's job is never done, but I never imagined mine would come with invoices I never questioned and love I never got back. Raising her was one thing, that's what mothers do, but carrying her into adulthood like she still couldn't walk on her own? That's a chapter I wrote with my wallet and no co-author in sight.
When she moved out at 22, I helped pack her first apartment. It was a little corner space with dodgy plumbing and creaky stairs, but she called it freedom. And I wanted her to have it, even if I had to put groceries on the credit card that month, just to send her off with a full fridge and a heart that felt safe. Each month, when she came up short, it was just this once. $300 here, $500 there. She missed rent, I paid it. She overdrafted her account, I transferred without blinking. She lost her job, I quietly mailed a grocery gift card so she wouldn't have to ask. When she didn't have money for a rental deposit after a breakup, I said, "Don't worry, sweetie, I'll dip into my emergency fund." Funny thing is, that emergency fund was meant for my knee surgery. But knees can wait, right? She got accepted into grad school. I was proud. I offered to pay for her books. Then it was parking, then it was fees, then it was everything. At one point, my bank app should have just had her name on it instead of mine. And when she got engaged, I was genuinely happy. I told her, "Don't worry about the dress. I'll take care of it." And I did. I paid for 60% of the wedding planner, $2,000 deposit for the venue, helped pay for her bachelorette party to the countryside, even though I was rationing my high blood pressure meds that month to stretch out refill. She smiled, sent a heart emoji, say thanks, and that would be the last I hear from it. No more handwritten notes, no more "Mom, I couldn't have done it without you," just transfer requests and expectations. I wasn't just helping her, I was funding her life like a silent investor with no share in outcome. And still, she looked at me in that bridal shop and said the best gift I could give her was to not exist.
It didn't happen overnight. There wasn't one fight or one disappointment that flipped the love off like a switch. No, the change came like winter, creeping into the walls, one cold draft at a time. She used to call me just to say hi, to tell me she saw a flower that reminded her of the time we planted tulips on the side of our old house. Now, my phone sat silent for days, and when I called, she'd answer only to say she was too busy. I thought she was just stressed. Planning a wedding isn't easy. But I started noticing things I couldn't unsee. At brunches, she no longer introduced me as Mom, just a forced, "Oh, this is Renata." She edited me in tone and presentation, offered polite smiles laced with mild irritation. I became too much, too opinionated, too emotional, too old-fashioned. Once, when she was on the phone with her fiancé and didn't know I was near, I overheard her say, "Yeah, she's been a little clingy lately. I think she wants to feel important." Clingy? A word I had never worn until that moment, and now I couldn't take it off. She started changing plans without telling me. She canceled the tastings I had scheduled, made decisions, then presented them like I was merely a person who needed to be informed. Sometimes I found out wedding updates from Facebook posts. And worst of all, she stopped hugging me. Even on her birthday, the last one we spent together, she leaned in just enough for a photo, but never once put her arms around me. I remembered turning to face her after everyone saying, waiting for that quick squeeze, that "Thank you, Mom." Instead, she blew out the candles and moved down the table without looking back. The girl who once curled up in my lap just because now glanced through me like I was part of the wallpaper. I don't know exactly when I stopped being her safe place, but one morning I realized I wasn't being loved. I was being tolerated, like a worn-out couch in the corner. Too old to throw away, too familiar to appreciate,
And somehow, that hurt even more than the day she'd eventually asked me to disappear. Weddings always come with pressure, deadlines, family opinions, budget battles. But I never thought I would be the piece my daughter tried to edit out completely. It started with the dress. I spent weeks hunting for something elegant, age-appropriate, yes, but still soft, still beautiful. I found a lovely navy blue gown with sheer sleeves and hand-stitched beading. It made me feel visible, whole. I sent her a photo standing in front of the boutique mirror, smiling for the first time in weeks. Her reply, "It's a little matronly. Can you wear beige or something that blends in?" Blends in? Maybe I shouldn't have cared so much. Maybe it really wasn't about the dress. But at my age, when people stop asking how you are, stop noticing you altogether, sometimes a dress isn't just a dress. It's a way to say, I'm still here. I still matter. Then came the guest list trauma. Family members who raised her helped me babysit when she was little. She got them, said their vibes didn't match the aesthetic. But her fiancé's cousin's girlfriend, someone she just met once, somehow made the final list. I asked gently if there would be a spot for Aunt Gloria. Her response was, "Mom, if you're gonna make this about your people, maybe you shouldn't be so involved." My throat went dry. I folded back into silence, just as I had trained myself to do. But it didn't stop there. At one point, I noticed the seating chart pinned to the fridge. She had placed me, not at the family table with parents, but 2 tables away, next to a +1 I didn't even recognize. "It's just for balance," she said. "Please don't create a scene." I wasn't in the wedding program. She removed the speech I had written and rehearsed for months, never asked me to help get ready, never mentioned she wanted a mother-daughter photo during the day. Her bridesmaids grabbed matching robes, mimosas, music. I was told to wait in the car until we call you in. And I waited. Because I got used to waiting. For respect, for acknowledgement, for someone to remember how deep my sacrifices went. My name wasn't on the invitation. My photo wasn't in the slideshow. My presence had become a prop. I'm still here.
And still, I told myself, it's her day. Don't ruin it. Be the bigger person. I didn't realize then I wasn't being kind. I was being erased. One decision at a time. Weddings are supposed to reveal the love in a family. Ours just exposed the fractures no one talked about. The rehearsal dinner was held at a gorgeous rooftop restaurant. String lights above us, a harpist strumming softly in the corner, everyone dressed in rich tones and polished smiles. I had stayed quiet all evening, watched from the end of the table while her friends passed inside jokes and old college stories back and forth. Even her future in-laws seemed more involved than I was. I poured sweet tea into my own glass. I served myself. I laughed when it was polite to laugh. And then it happened. I had gently asked her during a quiet moment,
"Sweetheart, do you want me to help you get dressed in the morning?" That's all I said. A question. A soft offering. She didn't even look at me when she answered. Honestly, the best gift you could give me is not being there. Like, just die before the morning or something. She chuckled, took another sip of her drink. Her friends, 3 of them, paused for half a second. One laughed nervously, another looked away and focused on her appetizer. Mark, her fiancé, said nothing. The words pierced, not loudly, not sharply, but deeply, like a knife you don't see coming until it's already in your back. I didn't speak, I didn't cry, I just stared at her. My daughter, the one I gave my body to, my sleep to, my smile to, the one I chose every single day since the moment she was born, the one who cried in my arms at 9 years old because someone at school said her dad didn't want her. Now telling me that removing myself from her life, from her wedding, from this world, it would be the best gift. A few minutes later, she clinked her glass with someone else and laughed again, like she hadn't just set fire to the person who built the foundation she stood on. I slipped away quietly. No one noticed. Walked to the parking lot. Sat in my car. No music, no tears, just silence. Just air. Full of things I couldn't say and wouldn't say again. Because in that moment, something closed inside of me. Not shattered, not broken, closed. I started to see myself not as a mother being excluded, but as a woman being dismissed. And women who'd been dismissed long enough, we don't scream, we decide. That night, I didn't lose a daughter. I found my last ounce of self-respect. I didn't call her the next day. I didn't text her either, or send some cryptic message hoping she'd realize what she had said. I never even told her that I heard her clearly, because I wasn't waiting for an apology this time. I was planning something far more powerful. My goodbye. Not the dramatic kind with suitcases on the porch and screaming in the driveway. No, this one would be quiet, professional, unapologetic. I began with the venue. I had paid the deposit. It was booked under my name. I emailed the coordinator, politely asking for an itemized expense sheet. Next came the catering. Over $3,000 was transferred from my account just 2 weeks ago. When I called the company directly, they confirmed the balance was still due. I asked that all invoices come to my personal email, not hers. Why the change? The woman asked. Just adjusting a few things. I won't be needing the full menu after all. Then, the dress. Oh, that gown. The one I drove 3 hours to help her choose. The one I cried into happy tears over when she put it on. Yes, I had paid the balance, and yes, that receipt was still retrievable. Refunds don't always come in full, but portions do if you ask before the pickup date. And I asked. One by one, I rewrote every dotted line that bore her name, but my money. I called the bank, removed her access, logged into the credit card, froze the secondary user, called the florist, and canceled 3 out of the 5 standing flower installations. She had budgets, dreams, receipts to show off, but now she had to pay for them without my help. Oh, the irony. She wanted a wedding without me. She was about to find out what that really meant. Because you can build an altar with roses and silk, but if it's built on top of a woman you stomped on, it won't stand. There's a quiet kind of power in reclaiming what's already yours. No drama, no revenge bench or rage, just calm, willful, certain. That's how I began taking back everything I once gave away so freely. Not because I stopped loving her, but because I had finally started loving myself. I started with the bank accounts. Years ago, I had opened a joint savings account for her, just in case she ever fell on hard times. She never shaved $1 in it herself, but she sure knew how to withdraw. I closed it immediately. Next, I reviewed the credit cards. She had her own card under my account, a generous co-signer agreement that helped her build her credit. Funny how she never missed a payment when it came to clothes or hotel spas, but when I needed help with my heating bill last winter, she was suddenly on a tight budget. Revoked. Access removed. Card frozen. Then came the will.
This was the hardest part. I had updated it years ago to give her everything. The house, my car, the small savings I tucked away over decades of sacrifice. I planned to leave her financially safe, even if she didn't always appreciate what she already had. But after what she said at that rehearsal dinner, I stared at that will like I was reading the final lie I had been telling myself. I booked an appointment with my attorney, sat in her soft blue office chair and signed the papers with a pen that didn't shake. My legacy, my home and heart, would now go to someone who truly saw me. A friend who had cared for me when I was sick, who didn't just call when she needed rent covered, who sent me casseroles when my knee gave out, who showed up not just for celebrations, but for ordinary Tuesdays. Love isn't obligated. Legacy shouldn't be either. And finally, the house. My home. My roots. She always assumed she'd inherit it, even joked once, "When this place is mine, I am tearing up the carpet." I smiled at her joke back then. Now, I listed the house, quietly, privately. When she'd call, I'd say, "Just doing a little spring cleaning." But the only thing I was clearing out, the future she thought she owned. Because this wasn't about payback. This was about protection. For my dignity, for my story, for everything I lost while raising a daughter who forgot I was a person, not a credit line. I wasn't leaving her with nothing. I was finally keeping something for myself.
The phone rang 5 times in a row before I finally answered. She didn't waste a second before unleashing herself through the speaker. "What the hell did you do?" Not hello, not "Mom, can we talk?" Just rage. "The vendors are canceling on me. I just got a notification from the florist that the order is void. The dress store says a refund was issued. The vending coordinator is not even taking my calls. What is going on?" I sat at the kitchen table, sipping the same tea I used to serve her when she'd cry about a college breakup. This time, my hands were still. My breath was steady. "I thought you wanted a wedding without me," I said carefully. There was silence on the other end, but the kind of silence that feels like hot breath ready to ignite all over again. "You can't do this to me. You promised," she snapped. "Everyone's gonna find out we're broke. You've ruined everything." She was unraveling. Not because I hurt her, but because I had finally stopped helping her hurt me. "You told me the best gift I could give you was to not be here," I reminded her, calmly. "And what did you think that would look like? This? This is me. Disappearing." She went quiet for a fraction of a heartbeat. Then she tried to throw her pain back at me. "You are doing this now, right before the biggest day of my life. So petty, so dramatic." I laughed softly, not out of joy, but out of sheer relief. The kind of laugh that only comes when you're too tired to carry the blame anymore. "Baby," I said, "you made your day big by stepping on my years. This is just gravity doing the rest." She screamed something after that. I don't remember what. The words melted together. Anger, threats, guilt, the same tired cycle. I didn't fight her. Because you don't fight a storm without shelter anymore. You close the windows and let it pass. Before hanging up, I said one last thing. "You invited me out of your life. I'm just finally showing myself the door." And I ended the call. Clean, final, cold.
It took 2 days after the confrontation for the next call to come. But this time it wasn't from her. It was from Diana, my sister, my oldest confidant, the one person who had seen every chapter of my journey as a mother. Her voice was slower than usual, careful.
She called me sobbing, Diana said. I've never heard her like that. She said you completely cut her off, that you disappeared right before the wedding, that she doesn't even know why you're doing this. I didn't speak at first. I just stared at my tea, cold now, because after everything she'd said and done, my daughter still knew exactly which doors to knock on to look like the victim. She said you ruined her day, Diana added gently, and that you did it out of spite. I closed my eyes. There it was, the rewrite, the backpedaling, the attempt to turn my silence into abuse, my boundary into betrayal. Did she tell you, I said slowly, that she told me to die before her wedding? Diana paused, then whispered, No, she left that part out. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was hitting the edge of the fence just right, the kind of golden warmth that makes grief easier to hold. You know what the worst part is? I said. I didn't even need her to beg for forgiveness, just a crumb of acknowledgement, a flicker of remorse. She didn't give that, I added, but she's crying now because the ATM finally said insufficient funds. Diana let out a soft sigh. I just thought maybe I could help you two talk again. And for the first time, I said what I never thought I could. Diana, I don't want to talk again. Not for a while. Maybe not ever. Because sometimes the damage isn't how hard they hit you. It's how many times they let you bleed, then blamed you for making a mess. Let them cry. Let them twist the truth. Let them beg through other mouths. I was done explaining my pain to people who only heard her tears. If she wanted me erased, now she could feel the absence. I didn't know where she got married. Not the venue, not the dress she ended up picking, not who stood beside her when they said, I do. And honestly, I didn't care. Because for once, I wasn't giving myself away for a seat I was barely invited to sit in. The day of her wedding, I woke up at sunrise. Not out of sadness, not even habit, just peace. There were no centerpieces to drive across the city, no checks to sign, no drama to be polite through. I sipped my coffee by the window and let the silence hold me, not as punishment, but as permission to rest, to just be. I wore the blue gown, the one she called too matronly, and I wore it not for them, but for me. I looked in the mirror and still saw a woman worth celebrating. At noon, I got in my car and took a scenic drive. Soft jazz on the radio, the wind is a little too loud through the windows, and it felt like I was peeling off layers I hadn't known I'd been wearing for years. Grief, shame, sacrifice, gone one breath at a time. I treated myself to lunch at a place I'd always passed, but never stopped for. A quiet booth in the back, slow service, one tulip in a tiny glass jar on the table. For dessert, I had a slice of vanilla cake. Just one. Celebrating something? The waitress asked. I smiled. Yes, freedom. The wedding passed. There were photos on social media, all posed smiles and filtered lighting. But behind every smile, I finally saw it for what it truly was. A moment she forced without me. A life she told me I didn't belong in. So I gave her what she asked for. And in that letting go, I found something no florist or vow or aisle could offer. Peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't beg, doesn't burn. It just breathes. I didn't need her to understand what she did. I didn't need her to feel guilty.
because I didn't do any of this for her to learn. I did it so I could finally stop hurting. If you've ever raised someone with everything you had and they turned around and made you feel like a burden, I want you to hear me. You are not weak. You're exhausted from carrying too much for too long. They call it love when we give without limits. But when our giving goes unnoticed, when our sacrifices become expected, that's not love anymore. That's entitlement. I used to think being a good mother meant never walking away, no matter how much it hurt. But now I know sometimes being a good mother means walking away with your dignity so you can still be whole. If this story reminded you of your own, subscribe to Hearts and Scars. If you're standing at that same edge, wondering if it's okay to say no more, let me be the one to tell you, yes, it's okay. It's not too late, and you are allowed to choose yourself. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I love knowing how far our stories travel and whose hearts they touch. We honor the women who fiercely lived them. With love, Renata.